I'm Lauri Fleck. Hi, I'm Lauri Fleck, head of Soltar Solutions, and I'm here on Live with Lauri today with Penny Isaac Nelson, and we are going to talk about project management. I'm so excited to be doing this show. Penny, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lauri. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
So just a quick question. Tell us a little bit about your company, Superior Results, and what you do.
Well, Lauri, Superior Results is really here to help support small businesses and nonprofits, primarily right now with project management that they need done.
So give us a little bit of insight into what project management is.
Wow, project management can really run the gamut from something that's very small and something very short term to something that could take months to do. For example, right now I'm working on helping a nonprofit pick a database so they can track all their volunteers. And so that's a project that would be an example of one that will take us a little while to get through.
So do you have an idea about how long that's going to take?
I would expect it'll probably take about up to 3 months. Mm-hmm.
Nice, nice. So what we're going to talk about today is, first of all, what is project management and why is that important to us?
Well, I would define project management as the ability to find a qualified person to come alongside your business or your nonprofit to help you accomplish a task or a project that you need to get done, something that really helps move your business forward. And for a nonprofit, we know that nonprofits have kind of a greater vision to make an impact in their community. And so the completion of a project would help them accomplish that mission.
Okay, and then how do we determine if we, in fact, primarily as a small business owner, which I am, I think it may be easier to understand with nonprofits. I'm not sure because I'm not in that world. But for small business owners, how do they know if they actually have a project or they just need another employee?
Right. Great question. You know, I think small businesses, we all wear many hats when we lead our own business. And so I think many of us find time where we can't do one more thing. And we've all got things that we just never get to. But sometimes not getting to those things holds our business back. Because as the owner, you know, your time should be better spent building your business, sales, marketing, all those kinds of things. And you can hand a project off to somebody else. Could be somebody on your team or it could be outsourced.
Well, I just have to say, I could not handle one more thing so many things ago.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. But I get what you're saying because I know that there are things that I should be doing or could be doing in my business that would have longer term effects than just the day-to-day of working with clients or maybe, you know, adding a new service or something like that, which isn't all that encompassing. But there are things that I would like to do that I know would have really long range effects. And not only that, would be driving my business in a different direction.
Correct.
Like one thing everybody has an issue with is creating passive income. And they're so busy making today's income, they don't have time to think about or spend their energy on the passive income for tomorrow.
Right.
So that's like what I see most small business owners struggling with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I would add to that most small business owners, if you spend most of your time in the minutia of the detail, then that's exactly the thing you're talking about that's going to prevent you from kind of having that 30,000-foot view as you should as the owner of the business or the person in charge. And so offloading some of those things is really what will free up that time for you to do that.
Absolutely. I think the other question is, maybe not question, but maybe hurdle that small business owners face is, if I take the time and spend the time with the project manager, am I going to, you know, is that going to be time that's well spent? Because the time for a small business owner, as you mentioned before, one more thing is going to put you over the edge. It's like that it feels like it's a something that we really want to do. We want to do it, but not today.
Right. You know, I hear that a lot because you're right. To work with a project manager is going to require some of your time, because if you don't put that time in, it could impact how the project turns out. It's to your advantage that the project manager understands what your needs are. And so I like to call it the hard easy, because it is harder up front. It does take your time. But once that project has been offloaded and gotten off your plate, then your world becomes much easier, and you've got a really great person you can trust, and you just let them run with it.
Okay, so help me make it easy. What would the steps be for a small business owner to, for instance, maybe set themselves up to have passive income? What would those steps be so we could prepare maybe before we called you, so we would be mentally and psychologically ready?
Mm-hmm. I think the best thing you can do is think about what your greatest needs are. What do you need, both in terms of moving your business forward and in keeping momentum going? And then how are you going to get there, really, is the question. And so if you're thinking about those things, you know what your outcome, your end result needs to be. All of those will be very helpful as you explain the project to someone, whether that's an outsourced person or it's somebody on your team already.
So what do you think the success rate is for having someone that's already on your team maybe manage the project? Is there like benefits to having someone internally as opposed to having someone externally, and vice versa?
Yeah. You know, the most obvious benefit for having somebody that's internal is that they already understand your organization. So that's a no-brainer. That's a definite plus. So if you have people around that need something to do and they don't have a full plate already, and you can pull them away from what they're normally doing, then I think you should go for it. But I would say most small businesses or nonprofits, they don't have people just sitting around waiting for something to do. For the most part, everybody's running like crazy, just trying to get everything done. And so they don't have capacity to add one more thing. I think you can accomplish helping a project manager from outside of your organization. They can be just as knowledgeable about your business. That comes in that upfront time of just making sure you're doing a good job of casting vision and helping them understand your needs.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because I think that one of the major benefits of having someone outside is they're going to be looking at your business with beginner's eyes.
Right.
Often when you have someone internally, they're already indoctrinated into the system, and sometimes that system is part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, so I think that there could be a huge benefit to bringing someone in from outside.
Right. Exactly. I agree. I've worked with businesses before who really struggle with that very thing. They're so used to seeing things the way they've been, especially if you've got staff or an owner that's been there for a while. A fresh set of eyes can be invaluable for a business or a nonprofit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you have managed. And then that next part of it is maybe some of the hurdles that you've had to cross with those.
Well, I'll tell you about one of my favorite projects that I've done. I've been working with a nonprofit and it's been very much a remote kind of job, because the nonprofit is based on the East Coast of the United States, and the ministry attached to it, the recipients of that nonprofit, are in Central America, in Nicaragua. And so I was able to plan and execute a very, very large event that they had, kind of a celebration / fundraiser. And I did all of that from my office in the Twin Cities area, and then just flew out for the event when it was time. But it was awesome having, Skype calls with Nicaraguans and pulling in the East Coast staff to include people in on the project. That was one of my favorites. There are some, I would say, barriers would be language for sure, because I don't speak Spanish, but we work that out, and you have interpreters, and you just solve those problems. They don't stop the project. So
So
that's
you
my
actually
favorite one.
had to go through, I'm sorry.
No, that's just my favorite project. I love that.
So you actually had to speak through interpreters for that project?
I did. Yes.
Wow.
And being on site either in Nicaragua, or when they came to the event, some of the staff from Nicaragua came to the East Coast for the event. And so there's interpreters that come along with those folks as well.
Wow, that's great. And so besides the language, what about the logistics of, first of all, organizing an event that the benefactors are in Nicaragua, and then organizing an event on the East Coast from here? What about the logistics of that? Did you find that to be a challenge?
I thought it might be difficult, but if you've got a good computer and great Wi-Fi and wireless and cell phones and scanners and all of those things, you don't need to be there. It was really not anywhere near as challenging as one might think.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So give us some hints for people out there that are thinking maybe they need a project manager. What are the hints or the tips that you could give to maybe figuring out how to find the right project manager?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things that's most important is finding somebody that fits your organization or your business. It's always a bonus if there's chemistry between you and that person, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them. You're handing over something very precious to them to do and finish and do well. So I think that chemistry and that fit is really important. You've also got to find somebody that's a good communicator. I've read that up to 90% of a project manager's role is communication. So it's communicating with outside vendors, etc., depending on what the project is. And it's for sure communicating with other people on the team, leading up to the people that are the owners of the company, they're the directors that you're accountable to. And if you add an international twist to it, now you've got another layer of communication. So you have to be a good communicator. That's critical.
So first thing, you look for a good communicator, possibly someone who shares your mission or the passion for what it is you're doing. What are the other things? Should they have done a project exactly like the project that you're proposing, or is that not important?
I don't think it's important that they've done the exact thing. I think what is important is that they have a track record of successful projects. And so that could look like a variety of things. I would encourage somebody considering this to check references, talk to other people that this person has worked with. Are they satisfied with how things turned out? Ask them about the communication and how was that. I mean, anybody wanting to spend their resources this way, that's just wise to do. So that would be a piece of advice I would offer, is check people out. It's no different than if you're hiring a contractor in your house. You want to make sure they're the best.
Good advice. Very good advice. The next question is about the result. For instance, I'm assuming when you go in to do a project, you figure out exactly what the optimum result or outcome is going to be. What happens along the way? Are there additional outcomes that maybe you didn't plan for? Do you always hit it right on what you were looking for? Do things change along the way? I mean, what's the actual life of a project like?
The life of a project, it lives and breathes just like you and I do. So you may start out with a very clear, here's what we want to see at the end, but somewhere along the way, something unexpected happens. There's a surprise, just like if you were doing construction in your house. You tear a wall down and you find, oh, we didn't know that was there. So you've got to be really good at making adjustments, being adaptable to changes, but also you need to make sure that however you get to that end and that end result, that you get there. And so sometimes the path is a little crooked, or maybe not as straight as you thought it was going to be, but you still have to be really clear about what that end result is and how do you know if you did it.
Okay, great. And what is the optimum size for a team?
Boy, that depends on the project. You shouldn't have any more people on the team than what's necessary. Sometimes a lot of people might be invested in the project and they all want to be a part, they want to help, they want to give input, but sometimes too many is not a good thing. And so it's important to pick the right people. Leaning on your main contact from the business is critical for that. They'll know who the right people are to be on the team. And if they want more than you think, then that's a great conversation to have with them about why we need or we don't need certain individuals.
And what are the challenges of leading a team of volunteers?
Well, there's always challenges with volunteers because especially when you're looking at a nonprofit who has just a mission that people are very passionate about. They are part of that organization through serving or volunteering because they're passionate. And sometimes that passion leaks out into, I don't want to make any changes, or why can't we do it the way we've always done it? So their heart is good and they want to help, but sometimes they require some leadership and some very just being gentle and creative about how you handle them. It's different than an employee because you kind of have a little more leverage with an employee perhaps than you have with a volunteer. So it's something that can be delicate but necessary.
Awesome. And so can you give us any tips specifically about dealing with volunteers and helping herd them in to the actual success of the project?
Yeah, I think, again, the critical part is that we're all very clear about what the end outcome needs to be. And so that outcome has already been, I don't determine that as the project manager. The person in charge, the person that's the business owner or the executive director or even a board has already decided that this project is critical for us to get done or to do. And so my job is to make sure we get there and to help people stay on track and make sure that we're all headed in the same direction. And sometimes we might go off a little bit, but that's part of the project manager's job, is to keep everybody headed in that direction.
How does one motivate people to actually get them to really excel at a project? Because a project is different. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end. Some people, I've noticed with things that they get a little bit concerned when it's like the project is wrapping up. How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them moving forward at the optimum level?
Well, I think if you have a project manager on board who's this is not their first rodeo, they have knowledge about not only the nuts and bolts of projects and how to get something done, but I think they have to be a good people developer and a people mover. You don't want to come in and be the tyrant and you just say, let's do it because that's how we have to do it. You want to encourage them and include them, and it's important that they get the vision. It's exciting, whatever we're going to accomplish. I'm sure it's very exciting, so let's all just work together and do it. I think there's a lot of opportunity for positive and encouragement along the way.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about what it's like, we're Americans, obviously, and we're used to having everything we need, actually probably too much, and then we're, for you're working in areas that they don't even have the basic necessities of life. What is that like as a project manager?
Well, I think it depends on where you're working, but it's very much in your face. If you're working in an area or the benefactors are in a part of the world that are what we would call a developing country. And so it can be very shocking if poverty and things that go along with that are not things you're familiar with. But I think the biggest mistake that project managers can make is to think that finishing this project is going to save everybody. You know, when I work in Nicaragua, I know that the projects that I work on with this organization, they're not going to solve all the problems in Nicaragua. That's not my job. I'm just doing this project to the best of our ability. I want the organization to succeed, and this is just a step in that direction.
Okay, great. Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but how does one deal with scope creep?
No, I've never dealt with that. Never. Well, let me define scope creep. So if we're talking about that a project has a very specific purpose and outcome, along the way, especially when you're working with a team, and maybe even more especially when you're working with volunteers, it's very easy for the group to get sidetracked on other issues that might be related to the project, but they are not the main purpose of why we're doing what we're doing. And so scope creep is something that you just have to guard against when you're the project manager, because it's your responsibility as the manager to make sure it gets done.
So do you go back to the drawing board with maybe the people that are leading up the organization and saying, hey, this is what's going on. How do you want me to deal with it? Do you want me to incorporate it? Do you want me to pull back? Do you want me to try to shift focus? Is that how you handle it? I mean, I'm curious about how that actually is dealt with, because if it's not dealt with, it's like a runaway train.
Oh yeah, you have to deal with it. Sometimes the outcome is very clear from the person in charge. It's very clear what they want done, and so there isn't a lot of question about is this in the scope or out of the scope. But occasionally there is some things, that's the surprise that might come along that might be really worth taking a hard look at. And so that's where that communication comes back between the project manager and the person, the stakeholder that you're working with.
So it's really about managing the project.
Yes, project management, shock. You're a smart cookie.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, because I've been involved with organizations, and all of a sudden it feels like, you know, people are running in different directions, and you know, it's difficult. So give us a tip from the perspective of the project manager on how to manage the projects in the optimum way. So if I wanted to be a project manager, what would the 3 tips that you would give me right now that would help me to manage my projects more effectively?
My first tip would be to make sure that the outcome is clear, so you know what you're aiming at. My second tip would be make sure that you communicate effectively. In fact, even over communicating isn't a bad thing. And the third tip would be just make sure the team that surrounds you, because most projects can't be done alone, are the right people, and they have a very clear vision of where they're headed.
Okay, so clarity, communication, and being able to really stay with focus.
Yep, the right people on the team.
That's great. That's great. So tell us a little bit about an exciting project you're working on now.
Oh, an exciting project. Well, I'm working on this database. Some people might not think that's very exciting.
That's not the one I was meaning.
Databases probably aren't that exciting either. I would probably agree with that. However, the purpose of it, I think, is exciting, because it's for a nonprofit in the Twin Cities area who doesn't currently have a way to track all their volunteers and help them plug into the things that need to get done. And so anything that helps them get better organized is a win for their organization and will help them move their mission forward. So the end result and the outcome of it is very exciting.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for taking time today. I really appreciate it, and learned a tremendous amount about project management, about scope creep, about how to get volunteers in line and keep them moving. It was a great and very informative show. Thanks so much. And how can people get in touch with you?
You know, the best way to get in touch with me, you see Superior Results on the screen there, and you can contact Penny at Superior Results.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Penny. You have a great day.
Okay, thanks, Lauri. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.